Joining me today for the second time is my good friend Raphie. Last time we had a great conversation about psychiatry and mental health and recovery. Today we're going to get into spirituality, and in particular the Eastern spirituality, such as Buddhism and particularly Zen Buddhism. And we're also going to talk about the famous set of paintings called the 10 ox herding pictures, which have a very profound spiritual meaning in Buddhism, which Raphie is going to enlighten us about. Before we get started, make sure you are subscribed to our new Twitch stream, where we are now live streaming video podcasts every single day at 9 Central. So every day at 9 Central, tune into the Twitch stream. You will see us live video recording on the roundtable every night, 9 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it. If you miss a live recording, make sure you join our new YouTube live roundtable live interview channel. And make sure you subscribe to that, because all our video content will be uploaded there. It's a new channel. It's different from our existing Roundtable YouTube channel. On that one, you can find hundreds of great podcasts in audio form. And you can also find hundreds of great podcasts in audio form on the BitChute channel, all different podcasts. So there's now 4 different channels that you need to subscribe to: Twitch, Roundtable Live Interviews, Roundtable YouTube, and Roundtable BitChute. Now, all of that can be found in the hashtag RT podcast channel of the Roundtable Discord server. So make sure you've joined the Roundtable Discord server. You can find it on Discord, or just Google Roundtable Discord. You'll find us no problem. And that being said, welcome, Raphie. Thank you for joining me, sir. How are you today?
I'm great. I had a good day. I can't
That's
exactly
awesome.
tell you what I did right now, right at the moment, but I had a great day.
I am very happy to hear that. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I'm sorry it had to start a little bit later than you had hoped. I do work till 8, so 9 is generally a good time for me to podcast on days that I work. On other days, I can do it earlier, but I appreciate you accommodating us. So I thought this was a great podcast because, one, it's a positive and important topic and an interesting topic. I have a lot of interest in Buddhism and experience of Buddhism in my past, not recently. And also I've realized that for some reason we kind of have under-examined the Eastern traditions here. We've done a lot of episodes on astrology, or on, things like Gnosticism, Kabbalah, magic, the Bible, the Quran, lots of Abrahamic and Western stuff, but we haven't done full justice to the Eastern tradition, the Oriental tradition, the Eastern tradition, the Buddhist tradition, the Vedantic tradition. So
Vedantic, yeah, I like the Vedanta stuff.
Right.
This is definitely my realm of thought, so I'm glad I can come on and talk about it for the first time, it seems.
I'm excited. So why don't we start with the basics, since not everyone's going to be familiar. Why don't we start with Buddhism? So how would you define Buddhism, first of all? How would you describe it to someone, hypothetically, who had not heard of it before?
Buddhism, I will say where Buddhism and Zen connect, and I'll say where they break off. And it's the place that Mahayana Buddhism and all the other sects of Buddhism go from too. So it's when Buddha's life, I guess I can go into Buddha's life. This is sort of important too. So Buddha is born of the son of a king, and he's living a life of royalty, but he's miserable and he sees nothing but misery around him. So he says, bye-bye. And then he goes and learns the yogis practice, and he tries to study yoga for a long time, and then he learns the aestheticism practice, so it's to starve yourself as much as you can without dying, and he studies that practice, and he studies both of these practices along with presumably philosophy and other people's writings. And he did all of this and realized he was going too far after starving himself for so much. And having realized that he went so far from where he originally was, he basically realized the truth that there is a middle way. And this is now one of the principal concepts of Buddhism, is the middle way, and finding a balance between these two opposites of life that apply to not just the things that he was doing, but everything. And eventually Buddha himself, I'm not going to try to say his name because I know I don't know it properly, but Buddha the man, before he was known as the Buddha at this point, went to a tree, and this is a tree that means the tree of rebirth, or the tree of life cycles or something. I also forget the name of this tree. but it's a very important like aspect in more tradition heavy Buddhism. Uh, and yeah, he sat under this tree, and after sitting for one day, he was enlightened, and he sat there for, I believe it was 30 days. And over this time, he realized so many truths of the universe, and he realized the Four Noble Truths, and he realized what is the continuation of the Four Noble Truths, which is the eightfold path. And having followed the Four Noble, having known the Four Noble Truths as true, and having followed the eightfold path, one can achieve what he described as nirvana. And nirvana actually means to breathe out or to blow out, like one blows out a candle. So that is that is a reference to blowing out the candle that is the burning flame of illusion in the mind, which is further defined by Buddha himself and further text. But nirvana itself is the state where that is then blown out. One is therefore experiencing reality as it truly is. And this is the state that he thus realized. And he realized that this is the one way to free from suffering. And he wanted to share it. And an important note is a lot of Buddhist translations translate the original Sanskrit word he used to describe desire. And they describe this as desire in a way that we use it that means absolutely not at all the thing that the Buddha meant. Because in the way that he meant the word that we now translate desire, and this is a Sanskrit word that I'm actually not familiar with, but I've heard it a couple times, like several times at this point. So I probably should be familiar with it. But this word actually doesn't mean desire so much as it means hang up. It actually means, instead of craving something we don't have, it's the hang-ups we have about the things we think about and the things that we might want potentially, and the things that we might react to and relate with, and things like that. So it actually means hang-ups. And this relates into Zen, because hang-ups are the thing that make you suffer, and suffering only happens when illusions are present. And in Zen, it's the practice of enlightenment. So it's the practice of doing what the Buddha did. So in the practice of enlightenment, one sees what is real, does not see what is unreal, and therefore the truth is then soft, for you are looking on the real. And that is the practice of enlightenment. And Zen is therefore called the practice of enlightenment, or the practice of attaining enlightenment. And a lot of texts are pre and post assuming your level of understanding of Zen. So a lot of texts are from the perspective of Zen is the act and the practice of attaining enlightenment, and it will teach you how to attain that. And other texts will completely gloss over that as if it didn't even happen, the whole act of getting enlightened. And it will talk about all of the truths that are now implicative from the realities that go around this. So yeah, that's sort of where I would start if I was trying to introduce somebody to Buddhism. That is definitely where I would start, and especially if I wanted them to then further understand Zen, because Zen is much bigger than the Buddha's task, and Zen is much, there is much more, like there's things to say about Zen that are much greater, you know.
Well, that was a great introduction, very great indeed. So Siddhartha Gautama, Siddhartha being the Buddha, the historical Buddha, he leaves the luxury of his palace, and this is reiterating what you said already. He realized at his palace he has everything he desires, all the pleasures and luxuries he could possibly desire. He goes out and he sees an old man, a sick man, and a dying man, and he had never been allowed to see those things in the palace, so he didn't understand about aging, death, and sickness. And as soon as he saw those things, he understood that life was suffering. And so he began seeking the way out of suffering. And finally, he came up with the Four Noble Truths, something along the lines of life is suffering. And as you said, the word really is attachment, right? So the source of suffering is desire, yes, but more so attachment. Because when we're attached to the things we desire and then we lose those things, we suffer, right? So if you're attached to your wife, you get a divorce, a lot of suffering. You're attached to your child, the child dies, God forbid, even more suffering. The
That's
more attached
actually
you are, the more suffering you feel. And so for him, the noble truth of the escape of suffering was to sever attachments through meditation. Is that roughly how you understand it as well? Something along those lines? To
the
meditate?
translation, the meaning of the word that is the Four Noble Truths. It's the last one basically just says, therefore, now you know suffering, you must complete the Eightfold Path, right? So the first three is identifying suffering, and one is identifying how to remove suffering, and one is now you have suffering gone, and then the further is now you follow the Eightfold Path. And the words that they use when they say suffering, attachment is encompassed within that, but it's more so hang-ups, because these things that this is talking about require no previous cause. They don't require anything to happen. They don't require anything to be going on. This is the natural state of one's mind before they realize these as truths and apply them in their lives. So as one goes about their daily life, one could think they are very happy and yet be suffering immensely in these terms. And the hang-ups that this happens with, these are the very mental images one projects and therefore thinks about and understands as things going on in the world and their life. And it goes into the question of spontaneous action and being able to act without the presence of understanding self and having a conceptual image of that. And it goes into being able to perform a selfless act, an act that is 100% absent of any concept of self and absent of any concept of I am or I was or therefore or any concept mentally, something that is purely yourself. All of these Zen koans that are hundreds and hundreds in numbers in these books, they all point towards teaching someone who comes in with a concept of what Zen is, or a concept of their misery, or a concept of themselves. And they ask, how do I free myself from this? It is making me sick. And the answer is, I can go into the answer, but they give them the answer and then they are free. And this state called nirvana is the same state we enter when we listen to rain, like at night, and we like hear it tapping on our window gently. That is nirvana. It's simply a state where the mind has no concept of past, present, future. It's no concept of building any illusions. It's no concept of creating these constructs. It's just a silent state where we can observe what truly is. And so in that sense, one enters nirvana every time they close their mind. But at the same time, the state that these monks would like people to get into and the state that these schools would like you to get into, it's not a one-time thing. It becomes so thorough, and this is the state that I've practiced. It becomes so thorough to your day-to-day that there is not a moment's time where all of the truths of Zen have been realized and are truly applying, and you no longer need any mental image, like any mental images to uphold them. And the whole teaching of Zen is how to leave mental images behind and therefore use them as tools when one needs them. And to realize that these projections of thought are no longer the basis of reality, but merely a tool one uses to interact with one's own reality. And these truths, when one truly realizes them, are very different than when one truly applies them. And when one truly applies them, they're very different than everything. And it all comes down to what one receives and what one can actually do to attain this moment. Because if you can only do it at random when the rain taps on your window, then there's no way to cease your suffering when something actually does happen. And there's no way to cease your suffering when there's anxiety. And there's no ways to cease your suffering when these concepts that you relate to your ego, these concepts you relate to what you call yourself, that your true self thus believes in, these things can poison the mind. These things can operate on different levels that one cannot even conceive, and they can come in back doors and take over your mind. And these different things only exist when we perpetuate them. They can be snuffed out in a moment, and that's why nirvana is blowing out, because all these things in our mind that seem to cause us anything, that we hang on to, all these hang-ups, so-called, we can blow them out in one breath. And that breath of blowing out is nirvana. And that legitimately does reference blowing out illusions. And it also references blowing out and then breathing in and then continuing your airflow. So at the same time as saying leave your illusions behind, it says enter the present moment and be ready and breathe and now interact with the world.
Very well said. And this is a great introduction to Buddhism, and maybe you've indicated it already, but can you now define Zen and Zen Buddhism, and how would someone who is trying to differentiate between Buddhism and Zen Buddhism do so? What would be the differences or the distinctions between Zen Buddhism and Buddhism as a whole?
Well, sure. Let me look over some stuff that I have.
Maybe while you do that, I'll just say a few things. In Buddhism, there is great vehicle Buddhism, which I think is called Mahayana Buddhism, and also small vehicle Buddhism, meaning Theravada Buddhism, and vehicle meaning way of traveling or way of traveling the path of enlightenment. It's a vehicle to move on the path. The reason that the Mahayana is the great vehicle is because it's available and practiced by a much larger group of people. So it's like a big vehicle with lots of people in it, whereas the Theravada or monk style of Buddhism is more rare and practiced by a smaller group of people, therefore a smaller vehicle. There's also Tibetan Buddhism, which is the kind I used to be involved in when I was in a Dharma center in Sangha, and a Sangha is a Buddhist group, meditation group, kind of like a church sort of meditation group together. And a dharma, meaning the way or the knowledge, is what the Buddha taught. And Bodhi is the tree that he meditated under, the Bodhi tree. And he taught Bodhidharma, right? So Buddhism is called Bodhidharma. And Zen Buddhism, right, he's going to give you his definition, but it's a particular kind of Buddhist practice. For one thing, it's characterized by a certain posture where you sit on the knees rather than in the lotus or cross-legged position. More like what you would associate with a samurai or a ninja. You see them sitting on their knees.
Zen people?
Go ahead.
Like you're saying Zen people sit on their knees?
Zazen meditation is kneeling on your knees, and it's the traditional meditation posture of Zazen is usually used in Zen Buddhism. Now, obviously, you can do Zen Buddhism in other postures, but the characteristic, famous posture of Zen Buddhism is called Zazen. And when you see a samurai, right, imagine a samurai in a movie, he's always sitting on his knees with his hands on his knees like that. That's the Zazen posture, although actually you wouldn't necessarily have your hands on your knees, you'd have your hands like this. And you put your thumbs neither mountain nor valley, meaning like flat, and you keep one right hand on top of the left and your hands like this, and you put it right on your testicles, basically, or on top of your belt, right where your junk is, basically.
Yeah, where
that's
your
how
solar plexus is. I will say, it is true that people do that. Equally, there are a lot of Zen monks who do Zazen in lotus and full lotus and half lotus. Equally, there are a myriad of monks who meditate in Zen ways and achieve Zen states of mind that do a lot of different things with their hands. I will say in my research, I definitely encountered a lot of people who do full lotus that put both of their legs on top of each other and have their heels towards the sky. That's definitely the most popular. But I will define Zen in the best way I can conclude it. So basically, I have to say at this point that my original teacher of Zen was Alan Watts. So Alan Watts is a studier of a specific sect of Zen, and he comes with his own conceptions. And a lot of the stuff he taught me is the fundamentals, and I don't really hold on to a lot of his specific beliefs necessarily, but he would teach that Zen is, Zazen. Alan Watts would teach Zen is Zazen. Zen is, sitting Zen, it's walking Zen, it's lying Zen. Zen is Zen through and out, and it's an action that you do. And then he would tell you how to do that action. In reality, that is how to do Zen. That's a very quick way to teach people how to do Zen. And that's what he would do. He would teach you how to do Zen very quickly. And if you keep listening, he would teach you the truths about Zen and then teach you how to do it again. And then now with these truths, when you enter the state of mind that he's offering you, you use these truths and now you can actually apply them in new ways because the clouding of your mind wasn't actually allowing you to interact with these possibilities and these truths. But what Zen is a bit more than what Alan Watts would actually say Zen is, because when he's asked what Zen is, he says if it was a traditional Zen lecture, a monk would walk up, he would bash the microphone once, and he would leave. But in reality, if you look into what Zen is actually taught as and what Zen has survived as, a lot of people will call Zen the practice of attaining enlightenment. They'll say it is the practice of doing that and doing it within your lifetime. And the entire practice of Zen, if it's to be, these books will literally say, if it is to be called Zen, it must talk about how to become enlightened, and it must teach you the way towards enlightenment. So in a way, Zen is, in all accounts, surrounding enlightenment, and therefore begs the question of what is nirvana, what is samsara, what is the state that isn't nirvana, what is samsara, and what is the practice necessary to enter nirvana from samsara. And the real question is how to see the unreal for unreal and how to thus recognize the real. And a lot of books will summarize it like that in English. They will say how to see through what is fake and thus see what is real, and how to do that. So the question is, what is enlightenment and how to do it? And that's what Zen tries to answer, basically.
Very well said. So you have been practicing meditation for how long, would you say? When did you start practicing meditation?
Well, I started practicing meditation about 6 years ago when I started practicing everything else. But the important thing about, like, what Alan says, and Alan Watts has studied in classical Zen in Japan with a lot of teachers, and he knows all of these people, and he's read all of these books. He stresses the importance of not limiting Zen to Zazen, sitting Zen, right? He is very particular to say that there is walking Zen, there is lying Zen. When you are lying in your bed, you can be Zen. When you are making supper, you can be Zen. When you are bicycling, when you are driving, all of these things you are prime available to be Zen. And therefore he says that he's a little, I'm going to say it's a little bit, taboo to say this now, because he would literally say the Japanese make a big thing of sitting. He's like, the Japanese make a big thing of sitting, and they're wasting their time because they're realizing this truth, and now they're not going about their life with it. So his whole practice was about giving you this truth, letting you use it, and therefore go about your day. And he did teach meditation, but at the same time, these books about teaching enlightenment, which are what books about Zen are about, they don't want you to be sitting for very often. But my experience in meditation is strange. There are truths in Buddhism, mostly, of sutra and things of that nature, that do say there are several levels of understanding that one must go through. So with meditation, I have went through different levels where you realize that the external world around you is an illusion. So you realize the external world around you, as far as we can see it and understand it, is an illusionatory thing. So then you close your eyes and you're just a body with your thoughts and all your concepts. And then you throw out your body and you're just, you're a ghost and a corpse, and you have all your concepts. So then whenever you're there, you start thinking about Zen, and Zen says, throw out your concepts, right? So you throw out your concepts. So then you're left with what one truly is. And when one understands what one truly is, when we leave behind all of these illusionatory things, it goes to the 10 ox-herding pictures. So what I just depicted was the journey of the 10 ox-herding pictures. And the last ox-herding picture, after one image where there's a void on the screen, it's just a blank image. And then one image where it's just a forest, and all the other images had people in them. The final image, after you give up all your conceptions of things around you, you give up your body, and then once you're inside your head, you give up all your conceptions, and then you truly are, then you're back in the marketplace. And the texts about being back in the marketplace reference, realizing that things are what they are. When you learn this stuff truths become untruths. Mountains stop being mountains and water stop being water. But whenever you leave everything behind and you have no concept, when you return to the marketplace and you are a person again after doing this, then the final truth of Zen, which is the ultimate point, is to teach you this truth, that all this stuff that is real and around you exists without you needing to conceptualize it. And all the stuff around you does not require any interaction in order to exist. And it is unbreakable. And the fact that your concepts about it were breakable and were susceptible to attack, the fact that those were attackable proves even more that those were illusions. But now you hold them no longer. You've left them behind. And interacting with things now, you continue the same principle. You continue every step of all the things that we went through at any given moment, but you do it in such a way that you don't let any of your karmic creditors get back at you. You say, I'm not going to think about blah, blah, blah. You just don't think. You don't say, I'm going to do this about this. You're not thinking. And then you stand up and then the task is finished. And then you return. And then at no time did you leave. There's no need for things, especially in Zen thought. There's no need for things to be given names, especially Zen. There's a story of two people. They are sitting students who are by the water, and they speak of Zen, and they talk of all sorts of Zen things and riddles, and they try to decipher what Zen truly means. And the teacher walks up, and they ask him that divine question. They say, isn't the mind Buddha, or like, isn't the blah 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 blah, and doesn't the doesn't that mean that all is mind and therefore all is illusion and therefore all is nothing and therefore all is everything? And like they throw some crazy bone at the teacher, and the teacher's like, well, yes, but it is much more sour when you say it. And the students are like, whoa. And the teacher is basically telling them, like, harshly, like this teacher is harshly saying, all of this, mental garbage you're coming up with, all of these terms and shit that you're thinking about Zen with, are completely the point of Zen. Like, you thinking about that is what's impeding you at this moment in time. Like, that is what is removing you from being able to be enlightened. And I'll go into a story that I think is important, that anybody who wants to understand Zen needs to understand, about how serious they were about attaining enlightenment and how honest they were in their attempts. So this student goes up to this private master. He offers individual counsel to people trying to attain enlightenment in some place in Japan. And this student goes up to this man and he's like, I need to be enlightened. Like, I need this because I'm so bogged down in my daily life, and my job is so harsh, and my brutal relationships are so dragging me down, and I'm stuck in a rut, and it's going to go on for life, and I'm going to live, and then I don't know what happens when I'm going to die. And this monk says, you must meditate until you attain nirvana, until you attain enlightenment. And he knows what enlightenment is, and he says, okay, if you teach me how, I will do it. So the monk teaches him how to meditate. Like, he takes days and days and teaches him how to meditate. And when he can meditate properly, he says, okay, you are going to sit here. And he takes him to a place. He says, you're going to sit here and you're going to meditate until you attain enlightenment. And he meditates for 3 weeks straight, every single day for 3 weeks. And he stands up and he comes back to where, the guy's living. And he comes back to the monk and he says, I'm not enlightened. I'm going back home. And the monk says, do not go back home. This is of vital importance. You know that. And the monk, having lived in the society of people who actually do attain nirvana and know what it feels like, this man wants this because he is hurting. And his life is not the middle way. His life is not free of hang-ups. His life is not like he wants it to be. And even worse, he has to go back to it. And he knows he has to go back to it. And he says, I need to go back. And the monk says, you need to meditate for another week. And he says, okay. And he goes back to the spot. He meditates for another week. He comes back to the monk. And he says, I can't do this. And the monk says, this is of vital importance. This is of life-saving importance. If you don't do this, you will forever be lost. You will forever suffer. This is your one opportunity. And he says, okay. And he says, meditate for another 3 days. And he says, I'll do it. And he meditates for 3 days, and comes the third day and he's not enlightened. And he comes back and he's pissed. Like he's mad. He's fucking, like, he is upset because he wants this and he doesn't think he can get it. And he goes up to the monk, and the monk says, okay, if you don't become enlightened, you are going to meditate for the next 3 days. If you don't become enlightened on the third day, at the end of the third day, you will kill yourself. You should end your life. Like, that is what is appropriate at this point. And he tells him this, and the student says, like, okay, I need this. I will do this for you. I will become enlightened. And if I don't, I will kill myself. Like, he agrees. And he goes and he meditates. And on the first day, everything's the same. Everything is, he's thinking about it. Everything's in his mind. He's attaining whatever mental state he attains, but it's not enlightenment, and he's not free. And he realizes that on the second day, he'll only have one more day to live if he doesn't attain enlightenment. And on the second day, he meditates, and halfway through the day, he attains enlightenment. He reaches nirvana, he wakes up. And he realizes what is truly there, and he realizes what is truly illusion, and he truly sees. And he goes back to the monk. And without even needing to say anything, from meters and meters away, from like the point where he can't even see the person, the monk stands up and he greets him. And he says, like, congratulations, son, I know you could do it. And he comes back, this like student now, this guy comes back and he says, like, thank you so much for your teachings. And at that point, there's no worry about going back to his house. There's no worry about going back to his life. And in fact, his life from that point improves. There's just whatever there is, And in Zen, the word Zen, the name of Zen, what Zen is the same thing as the word mu. And the word mu means nothing, and it means no thing. So it means not nothing and nothing. It is a complete absence. And when we say the word Zen, it should act as a complete opening in everything that is happening mentally. And everything that happened before will leave. And there should be nothing but Zen. And there should be nothing but mu. A complete absence. And the future will then come, because the future is a molecular dance around the present. And the present is what we go forward in a momentum, like on a skateboard. Like how we actually flow forward. But at the same time, we can lose momentum. But Zen isn't about keeping momentum in our person. Zen is about holding this absence. And in this absence, we can thus build mentally.
Very well said. Very well explained. And there's a lot of other angles to get into it. But I'm wondering if you want to get into the 10 ox herding pictures now. So the 10 ox herding pictures are 10 things.
Can I say real quick, could somebody pull up the pictures and then share their screen?
I will post the pictures right now. I have them right here. So there's the pictures, and then underneath there's some labels and descriptions if you can. I'm not sure if it's big enough to see. But there's a few different versions of the same.
Did you post them in general chat?
Yeah, they're in general chat now. Right there.
Can you guys still see my camera right now?
Yes.
You can?
Yep.
Okay, sweet. I'm just looking at the ox herding pictures. Do I look good? Am I in frame?
You look great.
Thank you. Okay, if you're looking at these pictures, so there's 10 pictures, right? Fuck, this is like really blurry. Oh, fuck. Yeah, I can't use this. Hold on, let me get one of my own. Sorry, I'll do this real quick. Anyone that's like black and white, because it's like, yeah. This is what we need. This is the one with the little baby boy.
So, the 10 ox herding pictures. Let's see here. In search of the ox. Discovery of the foot.
There you go. I just posted what is a great picture for this.
Cool.
Okay. So the 10 ox-herding pictures, basically, they're a metaphor for self-discovery. They're a metaphor in Buddhism and Zen Buddhism, and they're universal. A lot of people use them as a way to say what the course of enlightenment is and what your mind will be like at different states. But the important thing is every state is supposed to be a step towards the last state, and the last state is supposed to be a step towards the beginning. And you're supposed to go through this over and over, learning stuff every time and regaining information every time. So the actual goal of Zen, you will become enlightened and you will lose it. And the 10 ox-herding pictures are a loop. The 10 ox-herding pictures are basically acknowledging that even if you get to any one of these states, you will fall through the rest of the states, or you will fall backwards, and you will begin again at any point, and you will get to any other point at any given point in time. But at the same time, they're a loop that we go through often. If you're actually studying Zen and you're doing these things and you're studying and you're practicing and you're meditating and you're going through it mentally, then you will fall through this and you'll end up in all this, like you'll end up in the 7th state and the 8th state. You'll end up in the 7th state, like the circle that's void. You'll end up in the 8th state, that's the forest that's empty. You'll end up in the 5th state, or the 6th. You'll end up in the 6th state, which is like the man who's already discovered the bull, but is on the, empty on a cabin by himself, and you'll be like the person who knows nothing. You'll be the person in the forest who's looking for the bull. And the whole point is it's two things. It's you'll go through all of this stuff all the time, and you'll learn this. You'll become whatever, enlightened. You'll become aware. You'll realize some truth in Zen. You'll realize some truth anywhere. You'll lose it, and then you need to find it again. And it's a reference to everything, but it's also a reference to that truth, in particular to the truth of Zen and what Zen lets you attain. And going through it in that sense, it's also a lifelong journey. So you go through these minute cycles, but you also go through a lifelong cycle. And this lifelong cycle leads you into these different places, because once you get to certain places and you learn them so thoroughly, you enter into a different place and there's no going back. That past place has passed and the truth of this new place has arisen. And in the 10 ox-herding pictures, it references that as well, in the sense that you'll experience that through life and you literally can't go back, but also in the small scale where you can have a crazy revelation and experience a true state of Zen and a true state of mindfulness in whatever sense that is to you, and realize whatever truth it is that you're realizing if you are studying something, and realizing that in Zen, if you want to study it, there are plenty of books with plenty of very profound truths that you can ponder as soon as you get to this Zen state of mind. And reading these truths will bring you there, and then pondering them will bring you deeper. But this is one of those. This is something that you can ponder to bring you deeper. So it starts with someone lost in the forest, and they're looking for the bull. So the whole narrative is the bull is enlightenment, right? So we look for the bull. And then the next one is he's chasing the wind, or it's like he's lost in the field. It's like he's searching for his own shadow when it's sunny out, or he's searching for his own shadow when there's no shadow, or he's searching for his fork in his hand, right? So it's like he's looking for something that he already knows what it is, but he's forgotten, right? So even if you're at the very beginning of the ox herding pictures, you're already looking for something you know completely, and you recognize so fully, and you know and love, but you've completely forgotten. So at any stage, at any learning, even if you're just starting, you've already loved this state and left it. So you're looking for your own pocket watch, and it's on your wrist, right? So that's what the second thing is. And then the third state is you see half the ox. And the point of half the ox is it's a reference to duality, right? So you're seeing one half of duality, and that's the half of duality that exists. And the other half is the reality that is nothing. So there's everything, and that's what exists, and then there's nothing, and that's nothing. And it doesn't necessarily not exist. It exists and it's nothing. We're not talking about anything. We're not talking about that. It doesn't exist in the sense that it's not something that is everything that exists. It's the opposite of that. So that's why it's half. So you see one end of the duality, and then in the fourth picture, you see the whole duality. You see the truth. You realize you realize on a text basis, you've read the texts, you've read the truth, you've learned the noble truths, the Eightfold Path, you've read the Zen texts, you've studied your koans, you've learned your passages, you've trained. So now you know enlightenment, but you're not there. So this fourth picture is you seeing it and understanding it, But in reality, as you can see in the later images, getting rid of it, getting rid of the bull, getting rid of the metaphor is what happens. So even though in this state we get to this place where we feel like we totally understand something, we're still only 4/10 the way through. And after we think we understand it, then we actually learn it. And this is when we become friends with it. And this is a relationship between enlightenment. And this is referencing like enlightenment in particular, because we relate so personally with our idea of self. When we start to let that go, and enlightenment is guiding us in this way, and we're following these teachings, they exist as a friend, and we exist coexistently with them, and we trust them because we trust the teachers and we trust the results that they've proven to people. So we follow them as if, even though we don't know where they're going, and it's like it doesn't know where it's going either, and the sources don't know what they're saying, but it's all making sense. And this ox herding picture is a reference to all different ways people study this stuff. So that's why it is so open. But this is sort of my interpretation, and I have read a couple different, like several different interpretations. Riding the bull is the sixth one. And riding the bull is to mean you learn how to practice Zen. You learn how to, like, here's a quick Zen. Listen to me closely here. Here's a quick Zen example. If you want to understand Zen in a quick second, I would clear your mind, right? Be totally silent. And then I would picture the word I. I would think I, and then I would put a period next to it. I would think of the letter, I'd put a period next to it. And then I would just forget about it. And then I would imagine there's an invisible entity, there's an invisible owl in the room that you don't know where it is and you can't see it. And that's I. And for a brief second, if you believe that, you will be completely free of the ego. And that is the state that one achieves when they start to understand enlightenment. And that's the sixth bull herding picture. It's when you start to ride the bull and you know enlightenment. And that is why the very next picture is alone on a cabin on a mountain. When you become recluse, you become inverted, you become understanding, you become loyal to the cause, and these texts mean something and you believe what they're saying because it's not a dogma. None of these texts are dogmas. They are suggestions to practice better to attain this thing that we all understand. So at this point, the man sits on this cabin and he understands. And once he applies this knowledge, it's the seventh picture, the eighth, it's the eighth picture where there's nothing. And that's because I already went over this. You give up everything around you. You give up your body. And when you're in there, you're a ghost and a corpse that's gone. There's no corpse. You're a ghost somewhere in space. You are an X. You are an X in an XYZ axis. You are some point in infinitely nothing space. That is the perception. And then you give up the internal point. You give up the external point. There's no point of reference. There's no point of self. There's no point of X reference. There's no point of where the self will be. Don't even get me started on any past, present concepts of anything going on. All of that leaves with this practice. You've studied it so intently that that is what you want to do. And you leave behind wanting to do it. And when you're there, it's there. You're there. Boom. And what happens after that is inevitably, and the Buddha did this as well, he sat down for 30 days and then he got up. So the ninth picture is after you leave everything behind, you have to open your eyes and get up. And when you do that, you're not immediately, or potentially at all, you're not reinstating your concepts. You're not putting your clothes back on that you were wearing before. You're leaving them there with the knowledge that you can basically invent the same clothes later. And when you invent them later, you do it in new ways. And when you invent stuff in new ways, that's what leads into the 10th ox herding picture. And it's literally what is called a bodhisattva, like Shogun said. It's called a Buddha, somebody who has attained enlightenment. And the entire point, the 10th ox herding picture, is you return to the marketplace. And that's what it's called. It's called returning to the marketplace. So the Buddha returns to the marketplace, and this is normally a jovial old man, someone who is very well learned, someone who is very well established, who is not easily angered, someone who is very in tune with nature. And this person in this In the literal original example is someone who comes to the marketplace with bags of goodies and gives them to people for free, and like shares joy and like candies and things like that. And then they will sit in the marketplace and just observe the thing and listen to the sounds of the city and the birds and the stomping of feet. And this will be their new meditation. And then in this state, it implies no end. It implies no journey. It implies that there was no start, and it doesn't imply that there is anything anywhere. It's not implicative. It is non-specific. The entire journey at this point takes an entire new route. And at the end of the ox-herding pictures, it's non-specific. And that is why you fall back into the first ox-herding picture, which is where you know nothing and you're in the woods. Because once you've reached that state, you are that state. That is what's real. That's what your day is. That's what your life is. That's what the universe is. That's experience to you. That's thought to you. And when that's true, you do go back to the first step, because now you've forgotten. You went there, you got the diamond, you put it in your pocket, you sold it, and now you're living on your riches, but you're no longer in the cave. You're back in your life. So you're back in the forest. And now you might feel lost. And this is why I said people go through this loop over and over. So you feel lost, you search, you realize whatever enlightenment is in whatever fucking form you find it in. And Zen offers a million different forms to find it in. You fight the bull, you become friends with the bull, that you ride the bull. And riding the bull is understanding the bull. So once you understand the bull, you leave it behind, because understanding Zen properly, you leave Zen behind. When you leave it behind, you are basically alone, no matter how many people are around you, because you've left the concept of everyone else. So even if there's 100 people in the room with you, there's no concept of yourself, and there's no concept of a relationship with anyone else. So then everything leaves, and that's the 7th picture, is everything gone, or the 8th picture is everything gone. And then obviously you have to come back, and you open your eyes, and you're not there either, and it's just the trees, it's just the room, it's just everything. And then you go back to your life, which is going back to the marketplace. And it goes round and round. And you can go forward and backwards, and there's an argument to be made that it relates to chakras, which I think people have done before, but I'm definitely not gonna, nor do I think it should be. But that's basically the 10 ox-herding pictures, and it can be related to basically any faction of Zen or Zen Buddhism, in the form that it references the practice that every single form of Buddhism references, including Zen very specifically.
Yo, what's going on?
We're just doing a podcast right now, a live stream podcast. However, I also noticed there's something going on with general chat. Does anyone else notice that issue? Kashika, anybody? Have you guys seen general chat reset, or what do you see for general chat? No, I'm talking about our round table, Kashika. Does general chat appear different to you?
Whoa, yeah.
Unmute yourself, Kashika. Mods are capable of unmuting themselves at any time, so you just unmute yourself. But I'm trying to figure out what happened to general chat. Does anybody know?
Yeah, general chat's gone, dude.
No, bro, we may have to get tech in here, bro. Some big brain shit. I don't know. This could be an attack? I don't know.
Can you use it, though? Like, can anyone else use it?
Yeah, I can.
You can use it? Okay, so everyone still has access to it. So it appears it's just been reset, which is fine, like if it's been refreshed. But I don't know what happened with that. So I don't know if I did it. Maybe by accident I did that somehow. But regardless, it's okay. It's good to refresh it once in a while, as long as that's all it was. Sorry to interrupt the podcast. I was just confused, Raphie.
That's okay. Yeah, that's a little weird.
I did that by accident. But
yeah, I don't know. Do you want to ask me a question? Like, I think it'd be very useful if you put yourself in the perspective of somebody trying to understand what I'm saying from the perspective of using it as a teaching, and ask me a question from that perspective. Maybe. Like, is there anything from that regard?
Ask you a question. Can you say that again? Ask you what?
Like, from the perspective of somebody trying to learn Zen, is there anything that I could clarify in that regard?
Well, I think the one thing we would be remiss if we didn't cover would be, can you teach us how you meditate in a basic sense, right? So for people who don't know how to actually practice meditation, just the basics of how to begin. If someone hears this podcast and they go, wow, this Zen thing sounds really cool, I want to get into it. how do they actually practice Zen, aside from all the great ideas and philosophy and so forth? How does that actually happen?
Sure. So the practice of Zen is coupled innately with meditation, but it's coupled innately with almost a philosophy. And this philosophy is very basic, and it needs to be understood in order to be left behind. So you do need to understand it, and you do need to leave it behind. And the basis of Zen philosophy is that there are things that are unreal that basically distract you, that do not need to be there. And once you leave these behind, the absence of those things will leave your mind in a state that is like a computer without viruses. And in order to practice Zen, the question to practice Zen, you have to know your students. If you want to teach somebody how to meditate in a Zen way, that is trying to teach them ultimately, if you meditate like this consistently, how will you attain nirvana? It is how will you consistently, if you do this properly, how will this put you in a state of mind where you see what is real and you recognize what is unreal as what is unreal? And doing that is by teaching people what is unreal. And the very simple way to teach somebody what is unreal is to teach them what is absolutely, completely real and show them that anything other than that is unreal. And it's fine that things are unreal because the ego is necessary in a certain level. When you want to apply this to your whole life, you do need to deal with things that are unreal. But the Zen state should always be in the background, and it should always be readily available to come back. And to realize what is unreal, you need to think the example I brought up earlier. If you want to meditate, and if you want to meditate properly, you need to leave behind the concept of self, the concept of I. You need to leave behind the concept of your day. You need to leave the concept of time. You need to leave behind the concept of the future and the past. And all of this seems daunting because as soon as you bring it up, it's like karmic creditors. It's like you're saying, it's like you just posted on your Facebook, like, I'm not going to pay my phone bill. Like, that's what you're doing. So instead of doing all that, you need to find a natural way to meditate into that state so that you can get the free state of mind without even reminding yourself about all of the things that aren't that state of mind. And you need to get good enough to know when you're going to think about those things. You need to know how to shut that down and how to think beyond it. And part of that is letting them come and pass, because part of it is letting the piece that already exists fizzle off, but no more needs to come through if you truly know how to conquer your mind, if you truly understand that these thoughts can be taken over. But realizing what is untrue is as simple as this. If you are listening to the rain and it is slowly tapping and everything is slow and everything is calm and you are listening to that truly, and you hear the rain, and it, as I know for a fact, you are in the Zen state of mind if you can hear the rain. Because if you are hearing the rain, for that microsecond, you are not thinking, because your thoughts are not, you are focused on this rain. And when we listen to rain, we hear this, and it puts us in a Zen state of mind immediately because it takes us away from our mind. We are listening to this fully, and because our full attention is present, therefore, we no longer have anything that is unreal. We are just experiencing. And this state isn't even unnatural. We just get into this. When one meditates, we need to be able to go into the state where we are fully present, where we are fully experiencing what is happening, and take it all in and understand, once we take it all in, what things will go away and what things are here to stay and can't break at all. What things can be influenced with the slightest touch, and what things are permanent and unbreakable, and what things are completely impermanent and will always fade. And all of that assessed properly, you can enter into the silent state of mind, the state that I called Zen earlier, Mu. If you can hear the word Mu in your head, once you know how to meditate, it's as simple, like there's all these things that say, like, say the word of Buddha, know one word that is Buddha. And if you know what Mu means, that can be a word that does that. Mu means no thing. It means nothing. It means not a thing. It means not a thing. It's everything. It's first matter. It's once you take everything away, every single thing that was there, once you take it away, what's left? You know, that's what Mu is, right? That state of mind, if you understood that and applied it to the word mu, you could meditate with that as a mantra and simply sit down and say the word mu, conceptualize the things that mu is, the absence, the retraction, the not existing and the not interrupting existence, and the way that this is truly real and unbreakable beyond reality. That will instantly connect you to a way of thinking that is beyond this illusionatory thought that hog bogs us down and makes us all clingy and holds on to us and makes us attached to the real world. Once you understand complete absence, you can picture it. And when complete absence is pictured and you continue breathing and you're sitting comfortably and you meditate, you can understand what you are. You can really see who you truly exist as and what is really what exists. And you can perceive it from any myriad of perspective, but it's all true. And because all of this has the common thread of the actual essence of what your true being is. And once you can actually go into this state of mu and you can actually be Zen, then the true self actually comes out. And it comes out in ways that it's like, it's as if you took off a helmet and then you took off a latex mask and then you took off goggles and then you ripped your face off and then you took your skull off and then you took this whole thought process away and then you took the little tiny dot in the middle and you just squashed it. And then you're like, okay. And then you breathe. And then you're still thinking. And Zen is traumatic. Like, you can get fucked if you go too deep in Zen too fast. But when you are careful and you remember that everything is still available and everything is still readily available to go back to, you never ever leave anything behind with Zen. No matter how empty you are, it is all available. And even though you went to this whole different place, it is totally available to go back. And all of that is very... Some of it is hard. Like, I mean, you certainly could get stuck. But with meditation, I mean, this state is very positive. It's a middle way. This state has no way of authorizing anything. In this state, you have no way of authorizing anything, even. Like, there's nothing that is any form of opinion when you are truly there. If your opinions are coming back and you're still in this state, you're allowing some form of illusion to exist within your Zen consciousness. If you are in a true Zen consciousness, the way that the text describes, you should have absolutely none of this while it's going on, while you're trying to practice this. There should be nothing. So if any opinion comes up one way, that is literally an example of you falling off the skateboard. And you need to therefore say, okay, I accept that this will cause further thoughts. I accept that this will probably fuck me up if I hold on to it. I'm going to let it go and accept the actual truth that's behind it and say that that is true and that's fine, but I'm going to let it go right now and I'm going to go back to mu. And I'm going to go back to thinking from a state where there is nothing and no thing, and I'm going to remove everything from my conception and close my eyes. And when I open them, I'm going to keep no perception with me. So you need to realize how to think. You need to realize how to think what is not. You need to realize how to think about what is not in the sense that is something real and unbreakable. And you need to learn how to silence it all to the point where you can experience this and understand it as a real relationship thing, a real thing that you physically feel. The sphere of reality around you is the essence of reality that is you. And when you feel that, when you have no perception of anything, it's the truth. And when you feel it, when you return with no perception, it's the truth. And any conception about that, any understanding is false. Any understanding of that is potentially true within a vacuum of conception, but it is not ultimately true in a Zen sense. And that is not what Zen would say about it. So understanding that, using any of these things, these concepts come to you like tools. And my conception at this point is very blank. And the times I use thought are very specific. And it's very instantaneous and it's very easy to be left behind. I make my thoughts very like quick and made of plastic, and then I use them and I chuck them in the trash, right? And that is sort of the way that Zen would suggest. You know, it's clean your bowl of what you ate yesterday in preparation of what you can eat today. And your mental tools, you know, we think in the way that we think we need to uphold a marriage. We need to uphold our actual life. Our life upholds itself. Our life is unbreakable. Our life is physical phenomena, and our life needs to be our life. If you're thinking of other people, need to be murdered in order to not exist tomorrow. And when that's the truth, and you realize that things you're not upholding the reality, you're not really taking that rock and pushing it up the boat, like up the hill and letting it go. You're not really the one doing that. It's a illusionatory existence that is not your true being, that you are somehow connected to, even physically, that is doing this. Then these new questions arise because the nature of your true self then becomes accentuated. And in true meditation, it's all about experiencing the nature of the true self. And once you leave everything behind and you meditate, both walking, open eye, sitting down, laying down, closed eye, all of these, you are discovering the nature of your true self. And discovering the nature of your true self is as simple as, like I said, knowing what is unreal, recognizing it as unreal, realizing an absence in truth, realizing an absence in perception, separating your mind, all of your thoughts, your perceptions, and everything by just creating a small silence, the same way we create a silence when we listen to rain. And in that nature, simply experience what is true and return to perception, basically, and come back a better man. And to do that over and over, and every time get a little bit better, and basically build yourself a suit of armor with little scraps of shit you find around. And then by the time you come out the 80th time, suddenly you're actually a warrior and you know how to fight and you know how to keep this state of mind well. And whenever you come out of it, the door's right there. And if you need to step out or in, you always know what's going on. And that state, they say, is final enlightenment. And that is what the teachers will say is enlightenment. And that's what this teacher meant when he said this koan, or this saying, or what he said to these people. He said, it could happen in 30 seconds, or it could take 30 years. I mean that. And he meant that as in the final stage, where your armor is so well made that you no longer need to think about anything. It's all so easy to deflect and it bounces off of you. And the Zen state of mind is perpetuated consistently and passively. And no interjection by any self or thought of self is needed to be done in order to hold it. And that is what he means. And when you attain that in 30 seconds or 30 years, when you attain that, that is the Zen state of mind. And that is the state that Buddha attained, because after all these years of meditation and all these years of all these practices, when he sat down and he realized this, he's there for life. It's not something that he goes through a cycle through. He doesn't actually go back to neurotic thinking. He doesn't go back to coming out of the middle way. He is there for life. And in a certain way, I'm here for life in where I've put myself. And I'm not trying to compare myself to that guy, because he's an individual and he has his own experience. So I wouldn't do that. But in a way, the state that I've put myself in, I'm here for life. And it's through these different practices that I've realized this. And certain things just do not come up. And there are certain things that are different than the way I started. And a lot of them are positive, and a lot of them are neurotic habits that just disappear whenever you actually start to realize who you are. So.
Really, really great explanations. Really great sharing of Dharma. I really appreciate it. It's been years since I've engaged with this kind of material. I used to, like I say, I was a Buddhist for many years. I meditated every day for years, ever since I was young. Completely left that idea of life aside at least 4 or 5 years ago. But I think this is a great reintroduction for me. I also think this is a good point to open it up for audience question or participation.
Yeah, I would love that.
So why don't we go ahead and unmute the audience here. These people are all known friends. So if anyone would like to ask a question, now's your chance. Does anyone have a question for Mr. Raphie? I'm going to unmute the audience here in case anybody wants to. Next time the mods, that when I say unmute, please one of the mods help out with that next time. So does anyone have a question for Raphie while he's here?
Like, why would you do all that?
Why would you do it?
I don't think that's a coherent question. We're going to ignore that one. So I will just ask you, I think, if you have any final, thoughts or messages that you'd like to get out to the audience, the live audience, but especially the audience who will hear this on YouTube and BitChute. What is the takeaway that you'd like people to leave with when they learn and think about Zen Buddhism in particular, or Buddhism in general?
Zen Buddhism in particular, and especially Buddhism, but Zen Buddhism in particular, don't kid yourself, right? Don't think you know how to do it, don't think you understand it, especially like because even the people who understand it, so-called, like even the people at the states that like are people are writing books about, they don't even say they understand it. Like that's not the state they're talking about. So don't kid yourself, but at the same time, that means there's a myriad of resources available to study. There are so much things available, and it's at the click of a button. Like Wikipedia pages are full of these books, and all of them are great, and like most of them are useful. Like, don't kid yourself with what you know, but at the same time, if you're interested in this, there are plenty of resources to take you to the place you want to go, and it's definitely available, and it is a lot easier than people talk about. And the whole point of Zen and the whole point of Alan Watts Zen is to say it's very simple. You just do this, this, and this, and then you're free. You do this, this, and this, and then your illusions, and them as false. You get what's real and you get what's fake. It's the truth, right? That's all you're learning. So there's a lot of resources, so don't really think that you could understand it all. But at the same time, if you get enough of it, like, great. Like if you get enough of it that you think you understand, if you feel you're there, if you think you're there, right? If you know that you have understood Zen, then like you don't need to study anymore, right? But like you do need to study if you think you need to study. I mean, there's all sorts of sayings. It's like, if you think you need to talk to a Zen master, then you need one immediately, right? So if you're listening to this and you think like, oh my God, I definitely need to study Zen because it would be totally useful for all the reasons this guy brought up, then, you're the person that like is going to benefit from studying it. So definitely look into different sources. I would study Zen in particular because it's very direct in the source of dealing with the self and how you act. That's why I study it, because it's the direct source, right? It's a direct source. But if you want to study everything around that, there are a lot of books like the Dharmapada and the Bhagavad Gita and Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance even, and different things like that. All sorts of different books. You can look up lists of Zen books, and yeah, they probably have something to say. It is, yeah. But it's still Eastern.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
still a good book.
The Buddhist tradition emerged out of the Hindu tradition in a somewhat analogous way to how Christianity emerged out of Judaism. So although there are different religions, they're not distinct. One grows into the next, and the teachings of Buddhism are coherent within Hinduism. And other than the element of the focus on gods and deities, the reverse is also true, which is that Hindu principles apply in Buddhism and vice versa. Right? They're both what's called Vedantic traditions, and they have to do with enlightenment and these different things. So you'll find similar spiritual insights in both, but definitely a different emphasis.
Like, I will say there is a reason that the Buddha Siddhartha Gautama, sorry I butchered his name, but there is a reason that he was looking for enlightenment, right? It's because that is what was going on in like the temples of his time. That is what's going on like with the monks. That's what they were studying, right? And whenever he wanted to attain this, he attained this in such a way that was so profound to him specifically that he realized the way to do it, right? So it wasn't really a huge crazy thing at the time that somebody attained enlightenment, even though that's great. They're a Buddha, right? And that's why he's called the Buddha. But why that stuck so well is because he was the first Buddha to like come in and write it all down in a very cohesive way that a lot of people followed and became enlightened. And like it's not to say that he started it, because he wanted it and then he became great at it, right? So he just learned how to like speak this language well. And that's why it's very important to say Zen isn't truly the same teaching as what he taught, and it's not truly the teaching of Buddha nature and things like that, which are other things that I find interesting and do like. But Zen itself is not really the teaching of that. It's the teaching of enlightenment through no preconcept. It's saying get rid of all your preconcept for this one thing at least, and get rid of it for now, and we're going to focus on the actual like dirt and flesh way for you to actually become a Buddha, what that means. And that's the important distinction with Zen. If you're looking into Zen books, it is going to teach you the practice and the practical way to do these things. So if you want the practical way to do these things, you definitely need to look into Zen. But if you want to learn sort of a way to do these things, but it's filled with a lot of other information and a lot of precursive thought and a lot of other things going on, then you can look into Zen Buddhism or Mahayana Buddhism or different things like that, which will tell you a lot of the same stuff, but it will have a lot of other information that is potentially useful in like a lot of senses, but is not directly related to waking you up, which is what Zen is for. And like Zen is the practice of, you know, being in that state, and being in an enlightened state of mind is obviously better than being in samsara, in the suffering state of mind, in the anxious state of mind, in the state of mind where you're hypnotized, the state of mind where things come and they sway the entire boat, instead of the state of mind where there's smooth waters. And Zen offers you a gateway in order to do that. And it's very swift. The whole art is to be very swift in doing that. So if you find good books, like books of koans per se, koans are Zen riddles, right? Zen questions that are supposed to enlighten the user. If you find a good book of koans, say by an author who is like summarizing what koans, what they mean, say like the Blue Cliff Record or the Gateless Gate or something like that. Those are 2 books of koans. If you look at one of those with a writer's commentary on each koan, it's a great way to read, because you read the koan, you feel well, you feel wow, you know, that made sense, or you're confused, and then you read the writer's commentary and it's like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense, that's fantastic. And then you go back and read it again, makes a lot of sense, and you move on. These things can be very enlightening, very very eye-opening, and they often lead to further experience way later on, where you are just trying to meditate. You're just trying to get yourself into a state where you're not really holding on to perception and you're just existing. And when you do that, sometimes these concepts, and oftentimes these concepts will come back because they're so directly related to that. They come back and you're like, boom. And then it's like, it's that times 10. And then when you come down from that, if you hold on to the fairy's feather, you know, you can use that to fly. Like if you hold on to the knowledge, because you're always going to go back through the loop. But every time you go through a loop, like I said, you can put things in your pocket, you can get better. And that's the whole point, is to get this spiritual tool belt built so that you can deal with all of these things. Yeah, so Zen Buddhists meditate, like I said, they meditate with Zazen. So Zazen means sitting Zen. So it means you sit with the intention of doing Zen, which means you are going to practice seeing reality for what it truly is. And oftentimes with Zazen, sitting Zen, you have your eyes closed, which means you want to have your eyes closed, you want to be breathing, you want to be sitting in a way that your circulation is not impeded. So that is meditation. Once your eyes are closed, you are officially doing Zazen, which is sitting meditation. But in another sense, Zazen is sitting, doing the practice of Zen. In order to do that, you need to see what is truly there, to experience your being, to be present in the present moment, and to follow the Tao, to follow the flow of the universe, and to feel it and be present, and not interact with thoughts that are illusionatory, and instead create thoughts that are creative, and follow the Sephiroth and follow the root of creation, and actually create things that are meaningful, and follow different thoughts like that, and be able to leave them behind and still remember them when necessary. And in that state, meditation becomes an expansion on what is the self, an expansion on what is the doing of the self. Because when you meditate like this and you achieve these states of mind, that is like, you know, it's happening at 2:45 in the afternoon, or it's happening at 10:15 at night, or like stuff like that. So it's like you enter these states of mind, and then you leave them and you come back to your life, and then you know, make bacon and eggs, right? And when you're making bacon and eggs, maybe then you go and you really look at these eggs, and you know, you really feel that they're alive, and you know that they have being the same way you know you now have being, and you feel that you are in the same space. And these eggs can almost talk to you in the sense that they're humming and you can hear them. But listening to the hum of the universe you need to first say bye-bye everything I know, bye-bye what I want to hold on to, bye-bye what I want to think, and bye-bye myself. And you really need to see what happens when that happens. And like, yeah, it's hard to convince somebody to want it, but once they do it, they love it. It's like you tell someone to get rid of all that stuff and they're totally silent and they actually feel like they're in control, and they do that on the purpose and they want to do that. They have some sense of personal power in their meditative state, in their meditative practice, in their dogma. Whenever they know that and they actually have a good dharma and they know what's going on, like, you meditate and it empowers you, and these states you achieve and the truths you reveal actually help you. And your next day, your next bacon and eggs meal, maybe you're thinking about the higher truths of reality instead of what you're going to like do the rest of your day. And thinking about stuff like that isn't the point. It's none of that's the point. Nothing's the point. There's no point in Zen, right? It's just like when you get this tool, when you learn how to play this sport, and it happens to be a sport we play every waking hour of every waking day, when you learn to play this certain way, you no longer have all these impediments. It's like you're constantly using this computer and now it's taken off the viruses, right? So, yeah. I don't know.
Really great material, a lot of great information, and I think it's about time to wrap it up, but we'll open it up one more time. Is there one last question before we close up the podcast?
Yeah, I thought maybe I'd give you a question to ponder about, but one thing I found fascinating was that when Buddha was around, it was within decades of two other really important religious people. It was Zoroaster as well as Daniel. And I just wonder, like, what do you think about, like, the fact that, like, the Persian Empire comes and conquers this region, and next thing you know, these religions start having these fascinating, like new thoughts. Do you think that's from the wider network that formed as a result of those conquests, or was it just like an inevitability because of the natural progression of spiritual meditations in all of these regions?
Sorry, go ahead if you had something else to say.
No, it's just, yeah, I'm rambling.
That's definitely interesting, and I definitely like Buddha is after Plato and Socrates, if I'm not wrong, right? Buddha was like 2,400 years ago, and Plato and Socrates were 2,700 years ago, right? So these things, like, when we think of Buddha, we think of this ancient time, that's what I thought. But it's like, if we think of the society ancient Greece had and think that that's after Buddha, there's absolutely no way we could deny the possibility of like some philosophical text circulating over grand places and getting to the people who need to hear it. And Buddha had resources and he knew these certain people. And there's a lot of reasons to think Buddha has access to philosophy that he didn't just create. So it's definitely, and something I've already thought of, that Buddha, probably studied a lot of very specific and very interesting stuff that isn't really associated with Buddhism at all, but he probably did read and take in as a person. So yes, I definitely think, and if you're saying that these are people, this is something that was probably close to the area and the time, then there's definitely a possibility. Because a lot of the things that time, like I said, we're talking about enlightenment. They were talking about, present moment awareness, but they're also talking about higher consciousness. They're talking about psychic powers. They're talking about, like energy manipulation. They're talking about chakra enhancements. They're talking about things like that. It's all over the place, and there's nothing unifying it. And Buddha came in, and he did it on his own right. He unified it all into a way that you can do it and then keep going. And they took him as a spokesperson. They took him as, a religious leader almost. They did make him a religious leader basically, but they tried to, but the whole time he didn't let it and it didn't follow through. But they made him a spokesperson of this whole vein of thinking because he was the guy who understood it all and could explain it all. So he was a great teacher in this and someone who had a wonderful experience that was very closely related to this teaching. He thus taught it. Thus, he was intrinsically related to the teaching. So it's not so much that Buddhism is about Siddhartha Gautama. Like, it's not so much that it's about that guy. It's about the truths of reality that this guy's talking about. And he did not want to be thought of as a religious figure. He did not want to be worshipped or prayed to. he wanted the truths to be known. And especially in Zen, this is the way that people are trying. This is the way that the information is supposed to be given to people as directly as possible. You know, here is the truth, here's how you do it. And I strongly encourage anybody to look into Zen, and it's very easy to get into. I definitely suggest it. And research, you know, that truth, because it's referencing the exact same stuff Buddha was talking about. It is made with the intention of being a simple way in the same stuff Buddha was thinking, without having to bog yourself down with all this history and all this stuff and all these gods potentially and all of these like things you have to believe. It takes none of that. It takes it all away and says, let's just go straight to the source and the basics and do this for a fact and get it over with, and then you can do whatever you want. And you can do whatever you want during, but when we're studying this, and then you leave it behind, you know it. And it's very, very useful. So I definitely suggest anyone to go into it and look into it, because it's great.
So again, I think we have had a really awesome Dharma conversation. One possibility is you could do a recurring Dharma series, right? So if you're a knowledgeable Buddhist, which you seem to be, you could do a regular series, kind of like how I do Church of Camelot once a week for the Christian community. You could do meditations, teachings, if you're interested, just something to think about, maybe a regular recurring Eastern event. Another possibility is we just have a weekly show with you, because you seem like you're extremely good at, producing content. You're a very good speaker, and you got a lot of good information. So I would like to invite you to, anytime you want to do another episode, just send me a DM. I'm sure we can cover any number of things, and I'm enjoying these conversations a lot, so we should make it a regular thing. That being said, I think we'll close it here. I just want to thank you again, Raphie, for your time and information. Appreciate it. Namaste. And we also thank the audience for joining us here and listening. I hope you've learned. I hope you maybe are motivated to research. Check out the Dhammapada.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Yeah, check out the Dhammapada.
Yeah, that is a great one to start with.
And maybe you'll try some meditation, and make sure that if you're interested in doing a podcast as well, just send me a DM. Everyone is always invited to be on the podcast. You don't need to be, you just have to be willing to do it. So just send me a DM. I'd love to have you on as well. Make sure you join and subscribe to our new Twitch stream, because we will be streaming every single day at 9, so that it's a regular time, live content. You can watch it on the stream. Banned from the server, you can watch the live stream. Lucky you. And you can also join the Roundtable live interview channel. So that way you can find all these podcasts after they get streamed. So they'll be streamed today. They'll be uploaded on that channel by tomorrow, and that's where they'll get most of their views. But you are lucky you got to be here for the live audience, which is great. And don't forget, we also have a YouTube and a BitChute channel, which have hundreds of great podcasts on them, really great podcasts in audio format. And keep your eyes out for what's called The War in Heaven, the master key to a unified conspiracy theory. And that is a documentary film that I am personally producing with the Roundtable. The first version of it should be available either later tonight or by tomorrow. And it is simply a 3-hour monologue by me, but it's pretty interesting, and I think you'll enjoy it, and you'll be glad you listened to it. And that 3-hour documentary, Raphie is the film director, right? So he is a film director among his other interests, and he is going to work with me to produce the final version of that documentary. So check out the rough draft that comes out today. It will explain the concept and a lot of the information, and we will polish it over time. So keep an eye on the hashtag Unified Conspiracy Theory channel, and we will keep you updated on the progress of that. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and leave positive comments. Your friends on the Roundtable come here and make this content for you, so show a little bit of appreciation by saying, hey, I enjoyed your podcast, Raphie, great job, thumbs up. Right? It only takes a second, and it shows support for the people who produce this content. And if you like the Roundtable, please give us a 5-star review. All these little ways that you can help support the community, that in turn supports you. It's all for one and one for all model, right? Community owned, community run, and a great community it is. So thank you again, Raphie. Thank you, everybody. This will conclude the stream. Thank you, Neverborn, for recording. I really appreciate it. You're doing a great job, and thank you for having the idea to get the Twitch stream up and running. I really appreciate your work. And yes, indeed, the general chat reset was intentional. That was Mr. Tech. He felt it was time for a fresh start, and I agree, right? So this is a perfect fresh general chat. a very positive first event.
Perfect.
All the drama is completely gone in the past, forever, and never to be mentioned again. And this was a perfect way to initiate a bright new day for the round table. And like good Buddhists, we will practice Dharma, wisdom. So thank you, everybody. God bless.
God bless. Thank you so much.